I too like to live dangerously. All right, let's try this. How's everyone doing? Okay, awake, fantastic. So you did have your coffee. So I'm probably going to give the least interesting and exciting and shiny talk of the entire conference, and I'm really, really happy that none of you has run off so far with the side of SEO. I think that's because of the previous 2 words, but we'll see about that. All right, so my name is Martin Splitt, and I will use my okay, here we go. So it's a surprise for me. I love this. My name is Martin Splitt. I am a developer advocate for... okay, we're not doing this. I'm a developer advocate for Google Search developer relations. And I work with the web ecosystem team, and I work with the search relations team, or I'm part of the web search relations team. And I am doing my best to help you all build things that are findable in Google Search. And that goes 2 ways. I'm trying to tell you today what things to look out for, also what kind of things SEOs will tell you that might not be so relevant anymore or might not be true anymore, as well as making sure that we in search don't build systems that actually exclude what you're building. So I'm trying to kind of like, I changed the sites because I used to work with WebXR before it was called WebXR, and you had to download like a Chrome browser from a Google Drive, which is a very safe thing to do. It was like a build done by like Brandon Jones from Google. It's like, yeah, it's on my private Google Drive account. Anyway, but you could use your Oculus Rift. It was fantastic. And having built all these great things with amazing, interesting technologies, WebGL, WebXR, web workers, all that kind of stuff, I've come to realize that all of that is pretty pointless if no one uses your things. And we are not living in a time anymore where you just make a website and then people will come. It doesn't work like that, because how do you discover new websites? Well, you said Google, but I would say search engine for competitive reasons, but a search engine of your choice, and of which I am representative of one. So today we're going to talk a little bit about SEO in broader terms, what it is, what you need to deal with, and I don't learn from mistakes, as you can tell. I want to try this. We're also going to look into how to... okay, never mind. How Googlebot actually works and how Googlebot consumes our websites, and what we need to know about that to make sure that the website that we're building or the web application that we're building actually makes sense. And this is where you come in, all of you. SEOs have no idea about the difference between web applications and websites. And these 2 things, even though they are not clearly defined terms, are not the same thing. If I have a virtual reality application that happens to run the browser, if I'm bringing CAD software like AutoCAD into a browser, then that is not the same as you running a WordPress blog. That is not the same thing, and it needs to be treated differently. And for that, we as developers need to understand how computers, such as search engine crawlers and indexing systems, actually process the things that we're building. Then we talk about a few common challenges that everyone keeps to forget about, and they're very basic, but trust me, so many get that wrong. So I hope that you will be like, oh, I'm already doing all of this, because then, good. You're good. You're ahead of the curve, unfortunately. And then I'll give you some more tips and resources to go on and explore after this. And actually also, the last part is mostly to share with the SEOs who are bothering you. That's a very important thing. So what is SEO? Swiss television in their weather program usually does like these really interesting explanations of weather phenomena, and then they did this. And I was like, this is like my work in a single slide. I love this. Because there are a bunch of things that happen at the same time, and the web ecosystem is huge and like incredibly huge, and a bunch of stuff happens all the time in the web ecosystem. New websites appear, old websites disappear, old websites update themselves, websites get relaunched, websites get moved, websites get merged. A bunch of stuff happens all the time, everywhere on the web. And maybe your website is just part of that change by deploying a new version, by removing something, by fixing a bug, these kind of things. And at the same time, not only does that change, but also the user's behavior changes, right? It's not that I'm building a thing and like everyone searches for it. We can see that with 2 specific phrases: machine learning and AI. If you look at usage of these terms over time, they have been oscillating. There were times it's like, ooh, it's all artificial intelligence, it's all AI. And then eventually it's like, no, it's more like machine learning. And it's like, oh yeah, so machine learning, we want to do machine learning. Machine learning is important, machine learning, yay. And it's like, ooh, no, machines learning means like Terminator and Skynet, and ooh, we don't want that. So artificial intelligence is good, yes, fantastic. Oh, TensorFlow, what is TensorFlow? Machine learning. So like, it keeps changing over time. And obviously, if I have made my website all about one of these two things and completely disregard the other, then people looking for the other thing, so if I'm like AI, and that's the only thing that my website is about, and the only thing that I'm giving out as information, we make AI as a service. Great, but then you're missing out on all the people who are not using that term. They are using machine learning, so why don't you cater to them as well by making that more accessible to them? And that's not a technical thing, that's a content thing. I'm very well aware of that, but nonetheless, that usually gets forgotten. And then like we make changes as well because we understand better what people are looking for, and we're experimenting with stuff, and we're launching new things, and we're removing old things. So like everything is constantly in motion, right? It's a bit like back in the days when like pretty much a new browser release came out and has like a new version of an API, and you'd be like, oh, I remember 2014, I was giving a talk about web components in Spain, in Barcelona, and I had my slides were done with web components, and then the night before, there was a breaking release in the web components API in the browser, and my browser's like, do you want to update? And I'm like, no, because then my slides will stop working. So, and then I was like, very, very nervous about my computer crashing or anything, because if it crashes, it would automatically update the browser as well when I restart the browser, and I'm like, no, just restart Chrome, no, don't. So that was fantastic, and SEO is a bit like that. Everything is moving all the time, and it can be very confusing. The good thing there is also SEO is very broad. It's a huge field. It's like asking someone what they do, and they tell you, I'm a developer. That means nothing. Are you front-end, back-end, embedded systems? I've met a Windows engineer recently. They still exist. So yeah, you know, these kind of things. So for this talk, I'm trying to define SEO as a bunch of different aspects, and we're not going to focus on all of them. So one aspect is content. As I said, if you're not talking about the right words, and if you're not exposing the right information to users looking for this information, they are not going to find you. So content is important. That's not really our job, but you know, it's good to know if I'm looking at the thing that I build and I see that all the words don't make sense, or all the words are lingo, and that happens to all of us. We're going in and saying things like generics, and then it needs Matt to point out, no, generics is not a noun, that's an adjective. Like, what are you talking about? And you know, generic functions, generic types. So knowing that and knowing that language matters also means that we can at least spot if there's bullshit on our websites, and we can probably protest about it, because if marketing and content does not do their job, then we're going to have a bad time. The other thing is strategy, and that's where we actually come in, because we need to understand what we are trying to build. Are we trying to build a very interactive web application that employs a bunch of features that we can't have in traditional page form? Are we trying to build a web shop? Are we building like an application that has additional documentation attached to it? How do we host this? Do we use a headless CMS? Do we use a classical CMS? Do we just have two completely different websites on different domains? SEOs know a bit about that, but they don't know enough. They know just enough to be dangerous usually. And it's us who can say like, well, maybe we shouldn't be building this with React. Maybe we should build this with Svelte. Maybe we should not build this with JavaScript at all, because this sounds like people want a CMS, and I don't want to touch that. So you build that on your website over there or in a subdomain. So that's something that we can already influence. And then the last bit that we have the biggest influence over is obviously technology. Because if we are not dealing with technology, other people will make decisions that we then have to work around. And as you know, once someone has made a terrible decision, it's usually pretty hard to roll that back. Have you ever heard the term of protoduction? It's you build a prototype and everyone's like, yeah, and then we scrap that and we build it properly. There's nothing as enduring as something that is temporary, right? It's like, no, we're going to throw that away. And then it's like, no, we don't have time. Just keep building, and you're basically like assembling the airplane in flight. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it. So we need to be involved in that. As much as we might not like search engine optimization, SEO, we do need to be at the table when they make decisions, because they might make decisions that will make our life a lot harder and will then eventually also affect our users and will affect our stance in search engines. So I'll give you an example. I'm German, as you may be able to hear, and I grew up with the notion that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yes, awesome. So other people are doing that. And I like to just toast some bread and then just go with it. That's fantastic. So my toaster has been trusty and I inherited my toaster from the elders. And it has served me well for over 20 years at this point. But it unfortunately is no longer toasting. I mean, it's toasting on an upstate farm or something. I don't know, like what euphemism is. It died, okay? We're all adults here. It died brutally on me. And I was like, no. Okay, I need a new toaster. So I set out on a journey to buy a new toaster. And this is the kind of stuff that I see so many people build. And I mean, look at it. And I can put myself as a fly on the wall in this meeting that made this website. It's like, okay, so what are we doing? We are a toaster company. We're selling a toaster. Yeah, okay. So we have our designer build this beautiful design. Slick, beautiful. It's responsive. And if you look at the core web vitals, it's like super fast. It's amazing. It is a PWA. You can install it on your phone if you want to. Right? But then there's me looking for a toaster hungrily, right? Because it just died on me. So I'm like, I need a toaster. It's not like, la-di-da-di-da, I need a new toaster. No, this is urgent, this is serious, this is, I need a toaster. Okay, so I go to this website, and I look at it, and I go like, what the shit is this? The first thing that I see is the image, and I'm like, it might be a toaster, but who knows, yeah? The second thing is smart, simple, beautiful, which means nothing, but sounds very good, doesn't it? So this could be a smartwatch, this could be a phone, this could be a car, this could be a computer, this could be this water bottle. Who the hell knows? What is this? Nothing. Someone was paid money to write that. How dare you? All right, so that's that thing. Then I keep reading, and I read the sentence, it will disrupt your breakfast. And I'm like, fuck off. Breakfast is important. Don't disrupt it. I want my peace. I want my toast. So this is not helping me. The thermochemical food processing, what? Is this a pharmaceutical company? I don't understand what's going on here. Is this safe? Thermochemical food processing sounds a bit like thermonuclear war. So I don't want any of that. I have no idea what's going on, and the navigation doesn't help me either. Our philosophy. I don't want a new religion. I want a toaster. What on earth is happening here? What have we made out of the web? The web used to be useful. It used to be helpful. This is not. Man. Okay, calm your shit down. It's fine. It's a toaster, but breakfast is important. It's the most important meal of the day. All right, so this is not helping. I don't know what the hot bread thing is. Why would I click on hot bread X10? And I don't want to join the movement. I want a toaster. So from a technology perspective, this is great. The design is slick, it's responsive, it's fast, it uses GraphQL, it uses I don't know what, it uses web components, it's fantastic, but it's shit at the same time. And that's not a technical problem, that is a content problem. So it doesn't matter what kind of technology choices you make, it doesn't matter how clean your API is, if it doesn't serve your users. It has to serve your users. This does not. And get that. Abracadabra. Same design, same technology, the fastest toaster. There we go. Very German, very efficient. What is this? The fastest toaster. Thank you. Excellent. How many Germans does it take to change a light bulb? 1, because we are very efficient and have no sense of humor. There we go. This is a website for us. Never burn your toast again. Love it. Get your toast faster. Yes. Try Toasty McToasterface. Awesome. If I were a normal human being, I would probably press the buy a toaster button and get taken to their web shop and buy a toaster and have toast. But I'm an engineer, so I'm like, but what are my requirements really? I should start a spreadsheet. But the problem is, the toaster that I used so far that has accompanied me on this journey has been passed down by the elders to me, so I have no idea what makes the toaster a good toaster. I don't know how to choose. So yes, they have alternatives, they have our toasters, so there's different versions of this, great, but I don't know how to choose. Conveniently, there's a link that says how to choose a toaster, so they help me. I'm not lost. I can have toast, I can dream of warm bread on my plate, it's fantastic. So technically the same website, but huge difference. And I hope that you understand what I mean by it's not just technology. And people ask me like, so Martin, what is more important, technical SEO or content SEO? What is more important in your car, the steering wheel or the tire? I mean, what kind of, okay, whatever. Okay, so whatever you do, technical SEO and technical considerations and technical engineering on the web without good content and the strategy of what you're trying to accomplish is chocolate ice cream emoji. Don't tell me otherwise. Please don't tell me otherwise. So, where do we come in? Well, we come in on the technical level because that's what we are being paid to do and that's what we are really good at. And to understand what is expected of us means to understand how we are building websites and what happens with them when they are being consumed by a robot, because that's what's going to happen. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter how we design our APIs. Our API, the only API that search engines will look at is your HTML in the end. So who can tell me what this website is about? Obviously, the fastest toaster. I mean, come on, that's an easy question. No, and yet we keep building things like that. Is that a problem? Surprisingly, no, it isn't, because Google Search has been rendering the web since years, and since 2019, we also have been doing that with a capable Chrome browser, the same Chrome browser that you are running on your devices if you're running Chrome. So SEOs usually see this and freak out immediately. They're like, oh my God, Google cannot see our content. And they couldn't be more wrong. Because this is not what we're looking at. This is what your website or web application probably produces. Maybe a little more complicated, maybe more JavaScript files in there. But fundamentally, that is what it produces. But we render your websites and your web applications in order to make sure that we understand what's going on. Because otherwise, we would lose out on a large part of the web. We would not be able to understand what a large part of the web is these days. And that's an us problem, not a you problem. Don't let SEOs make it a you problem, okay? So how does that work? Well, fundamentally, at some point, we find a URL somewhere. That could be by you submitting it in a sitemap, or you submitting it elsewhere, or some website linking to that URL, or like a URL appears somewhere in a website that we know. We might put it into our crawl queue, and if we think it's time for it, then we actually crawl it. What does crawling mean? Crawling means that we are actually making an HTTP request. We have recently learned how to make HTTP 2 requests, so that's good. And you could say like, wait, what? Only recently? It's like, yeah, 2 years ago or something, we started making HTTP 2 crawls. You can say like, hold on, that is a long time after HTTP 2 has been around in the wild. Yes, but remember, we have to do this on a very big scale. We are crawling trillions of URLs. So we can't make changes that quickly, because if it breaks stuff, it breaks a large part of search. So we have to move a little slower, but we have finally made that move. And we're now pretty good at also consuming H2 requests. So fundamentally what we do is we make an HTTP request, we download the stuff that you put out there, and that's what we just saw earlier. And then we see, oh, okay, so we also need to download the script files, we need to download CSS files, blah, 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 images, videos. We're going to do all of that as well. And then eventually, when we have all this, we move on to processing. So we now want to understand What is going on here? And the very first thing that we do is we check what we got from the crawler. If that is a 404 or 500 response, then your server told us, there's a problem here, and we don't really have to move on from that one because your server says there's nothing here for us, so okay, we stop the process here. But if it doesn't happen, then we actually do a bunch of stuff, including rendering. So for instance, we render it in a headless Chrome instance, and we run JavaScript, but we can't do that right away. But a few things we can do right away. And now again, remember, we have to do this at web scale, not just your website, not just your friend's website, every website. You have any idea how many websites exist that have still containing useful, helpful, interesting information for users that haven't been touched in the last 5 to 10 to 20 years? That exists still and is still a sizable portion. Wikipedia, all the other websites are usually also giving us a bunch of content in the HTML right away. So what we're doing is this processing step really is a bunch of microservices that talk to each other. And these microservices basically run in parallel. So one thing is we're looking like, do we have content? Cool, we already have content. Nice. Oh, there's links in here. Okay, cool. There's URLs that we can put back into the crawl queue. So there's like a link extraction phase that already happens that is pretty quick and happens pretty early on in the process if we can do that. If your website looks like the website I shown you a few slides earlier, where it's like HTML, script tag, done, then that is a problem, because if we look at that right away, we don't see any of your links, we don't see any of your pages, we don't know what else is there. So if you're a news website, for instance, that is not great, because that means that it takes us longer, it takes us more work to discover things like links to articles that you might want in the index as quickly as possible, because people might want to read them and discover them through search. They won't find them through search because we haven't seen them yet. All right. Other things are happening. We figure out what the language is. We figure out what this is about, if it's a good page, if it's a bad page, if it's a porn page. These kind of things happen all pretty much like at the same time. And there's also rendering happen. So we have like a queue. Your website will get queued, or a URL will get queued for rendering. That usually takes a few minutes. And after a few minutes, it actually gets rendered by a headless Chromium. We wrap that with like caching layers and stuff and retry logic. So a bunch of things are happening here. And then the rendered HTML, that what comes out of a Chrome instance on our service, that goes into indexing and is reprocessed and then put into the index. This process used to take a while, I know. And SEOs love to come to you and say like, you can't use React. Sorry, because it takes weeks for Google to render it. And you can say, you're wrong. It's documented, we have documentation. In 95% of the cases, it is seconds away, basically. So that's not an issue, that's not a real concern. The only concern that still is true is if you have a lot of pages, and these pages change very quickly, very often. News websites come to mind, like your web shop that gets a new article every month. No, that's not frequent change. But if it's like a website that changes very frequently and you want that to be up to date as much as possible in the index that we build, then you want to make sure that in the very first stage of processing, we can discover your content. If we can't, it just takes a little longer, but it might help you get a little quicker into the index, because that's what we build, an index, which is a huge database that we can then query if people are looking for stuff. And once things are in the index, and you query them, like best cafe in Timisoara, then what happens is we look into our database, we get a bunch of documents for cafes in Timisoara, and then we look at figuring out which ones are the ones that you probably want to see. Right. In ranking, no one really has a hand. Ranking is basically like the international waters of search engine optimization. You have zero control. This is our job as well. This is not your job. This is our job to make sure that we are surfacing the most relevant thing. Everyone thinks their website is the most relevant. I've got news for you. It's not. So don't do that. But however, the most important thing is there has been a lag until 2019. If you remember, I think in 2019 we had Chrome 48 or something, or 49 or something like that. We were still dealing with, I think it was like 80 or something at this point. We were basically rendering with a browser that didn't understand ES6. So it took us a while to actually make modifications in Chrome so that we can run it at scale on headless instances. It is, since 2019, it is evergreen. So if you look at your logs, or if you look at the user agent in JavaScript, if you look at the navigator.userAgent, you're going to see that it has been updated and it continues to update. The same goes with the testing tools. The testing tools have been updated to make sure that they're using the same version at all times as the real production infrastructure. It's not a separate thing. And as you can see, we expose that transparently in the user agent string through the Chrome version. So if you want to know what version we are running, you can find out relatively simply. So this website is not a problem, or this web application does not have a problem per se, because we are actually rendering it, and the rendered HTML is what we're going to look at. Fantastic. Now, this makes Googlebot happy, and that makes us happy, and you don't have to worry about it too much. There will be SEOs telling you otherwise. They are wrong. And they haven't been listening since 2019, so take from that what you want. The other problem that I do see, and there's like a few things that people are forgetting about, is that just because you're using the latest and greatest framework doesn't mean that metadata on your page doesn't matter anymore. So if I go search for something, like a cupcake recipe, I'm looking for cupcakes here, for quick cupcakes because I don't have time, and I get this in search results, will I click on one of those? No, probably not, because I don't know what's going on here and which one might be the best one for me. But if the titles reflect what I'm going to get, then I might be more inclined to actually click on this. I don't care for apple pie, I don't care for awesome brownies, I want the birthday cupcakes. There we go, click. So make sure that your titles reflect the content. And that is also like if you are building, I don't know, like a real estate platform where you can see profiles of houses on the market, make sure that the title contains useful information, like where's the house, how big is the house, these kind of things. And not just like, myawesomerealestate.com. Like, no one cares. Give yourself a good title, a useful title, please. And there's a bit of outdated information in here, but I keep it around because I don't want to get into the specific syntax. But fundamentally, what you want to make sure is that you're setting title and meta description. Because the other thing is, the title is one thing, but you see like these blurred lines below the titles, that's the meta description. You have influence on that. So if your description makes me go, ooh, interesting, and I click on it, that's great. If it doesn't, then it's actually pretty shitty. So I don't want to go into the specific language syntax for these ones here anymore. We do have an outdated video series, and I'm not going to update because the syntax and the libraries do not matter. And I made a mistake there by actually making it sound like it matters. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Whatever framework you're using, you can set description, title, and other things. And structured data is the thing that you want to look into. So check out the video series and share that with your SEOs. Because your SEOs might actually benefit from learning a little bit about the SEO implications of that stuff. So what could possibly go wrong? I'll share a few interesting things. I tried out paragliding, and it went really well. Some property was undefined, I guess. So yeah, and does anyone know what I did wrong, by the way, in this GIF? Anyone here happens to know? Because paragliders are like, yeah, of course. And I had, what did I do wrong? Sorry? What specifically did you say? Because I don't want to mix the words up. Wind, yes. I forgot to make sure that I'm looking at how the wind is going, and this gentleman just tries to tell me, like, change your direction and look at me go. So yeah. Good job. The other thing is actually there's two problems. There's also the way that I hold my arms is wrong, apparently. So I learned you can hold your arms wrong. Thanks. So if you find that your pages got stuck and are not discovered at all, and you can find that out in Search Console, then you need to figure out how you link to them. And I can't believe, this is 2023, and I'm still talking about it because you all are still making these things happen. That's a link. Use it. Okay, fine, you can use JavaScript on your links. That's perfectly legit. That's absolutely accurate. No. That link is a link, good. Well done. Halfway there, buddy. it doesn't go anywhere. That's not great. Oh, you want me to go somewhere? Yes, please. So I'll just go to the current page. No. Okay, fine. Then we use Java. No. This needs to be a URL that we can make an HTTP request to. This is not a URL you can make an HTTP request to. What? No. Don't do any of these things, please. Please just don't. You want an A tag with an href that goes to a URL that someone can potentially make a network request to. Otherwise, we are not seeing it. I'm sorry, okay? Also with URLs, the hashbang thing. So this is a fragment, subsection is a fragment, that takes you to different content on the same page. That's a hack. We needed to do this years ago, I know. If you're still doing this for a website that you expect to be found in search, don't. Okay, you can just use the history API. It works in all browsers, it is fine. Okay. So in Search Console, you're stuck with currently not indexed, but discovered. Okay, so we are now using links. We've exposed our URLs, fantastic. And a URL can be anything. A URL can be a very specific view state. It can be, I want to see this specific article with this specific thing highlighted in this specific size, and that can be exposed to URL parameters, and you can use that in your props to make sure that a URL already reflects the correct view state. If you're not doing that, that's bad. Now you're doing it, great. So you have been discovered, but you're not indexed. So this could be a crawl issue. Well, not really an issue. It's more like we can't crawl the entire web all the time. We would love to, but eventually also us run out of computers. So that's not great. So basically, we need to figure out how often do we make network requests to your server for this URL, and how often should we, right? So what we try to do is we try to figure out how often you want us to do this. So if we are making a bunch of requests, like 300 requests a second, your website gives us an OK for this URL, and it's pretty quick, then we can maybe try more. Oh, careful here, the website is getting slower. Oh, okay, sorry. So if you're rate limiting us, or if we're being rate limited by the fact that your stuff starts crashing, we will back down, all right? So we'll figure that out automatically for you so that we don't bring your service down. And that also influences how quickly we see stuff. If you have 1,000 new pages, but we can only request 100 pages at a time, it's just going to take us a few iterations until we see all your pages. The other thing is how popular and how relevant is this? If your website shows something that no one ever searches for, then do we need to keep it updated that much? Do we have to come back every 5 minutes? No. If you are a news website again, maybe we should come back every couple of minutes for updates and new articles, huh? Also, how fresh is this? If you look at a Wikipedia page, most of the articles don't change that much. Like the history of jam. Pretty much written. It's fine. Okay? We don't have to go every month and check if it's new stuff happening in the jam community, I guess. JavaScript frameworks, different story. So if you want to learn more about crawl budget, and honestly, my guidance here is mostly only websites with more than 10 million URLs need to worry about this. If you're smaller than that, I have good or bad news depending on how you measure your self-worth. If you're less than 10 million URLs, you're small. And that's good because that means you don't have to deal with this crap. The other thing is duplicated content. SEOs will come to you and say, we have a problem. We're going to get a duplicated content penalty. There's no such thing as a duplicated content penalty. What we're going to do is we're going to canonicalize things. And I know I'm running over time. I'm so sorry. So what we are doing is we see multiple URLs pointing to the same stuff. We crawl both of them, but we throw away some of them. You can give us a hint what you want us to do. So if you tell us, okay, so today the top dog is Leica, but really, you should index Leica, because Leica will stick around, but the top dog will change tomorrow. Then you can tell us with the link rel canonical. That's not a problem. You can specify that in JavaScript as well. That's fine. You can also use the HTTP header if that's more convenient. That's perfectly fine. But we treat it as a suggestion. If you don't want us to make requests to specific URLs, you can block them out. That's not a problem. You can say, oh, I don't want Googlebot to make requests to these URLs. Sure, we will stop that. The problem is, if we don't know what this is about, we might still index it. Because if some other website links to it and saying like, here's really cool shit, and someone goes like, really cool shit, then we might be like, we don't know what is on this page, but this might be really cool shit. So here's this URL that we don't know much about. If you don't want that, you can give us a meta name robots, either as an HTTP header or as a meta tag. That works as well. Don't do both. If you disallow us from making an HTTP request, you're blocking us from seeing this, right? So let us crawl and be like, oh, you don't want it in the index, this is fine. And you can make like fun errors, like if I go to a URL that doesn't exist, I get an error page, but for some reason, your server gives us a 200 OK, then that's not great, because, you know. Not great. So if you want to avoid that, you can redirect us to a page where your server does respond with a 404, or you can change the meta tags dynamically as well. That also works. But be careful here. So if you take a website and you say like no index by default, and then change it dynamically to the pages that you want indexed, doesn't work. I can't use like internet GIFs. I have to use things of myself because that copyright and legal reasons. It's really stupid. So what happens is we go process, we see the original HTML. In the original HTML, you tell us we don't want that indexed, so we stop the rest of the pipeline. We never render your JavaScript. So don't do that. Also, we don't persist data, and we do like a bunch of other things. If you want to learn more about that, go to goo.gle/search-js-troubleshooter. It is an article that has a lot of details on how to troubleshoot stuff in Google search. Not all crawlers support JavaScript, like social media crawlers, for instance, don't. You can do like something silly, like pre-render, server-side render, and hydrate, or use dynamic rendering. Dynamic rendering is a really stupid idea. Do not do that. Just don't. So let's wrap it up. Test your pages. We have testing tools. The mobile-friendly test or Search Console both let you look at the rendered HTML. If things are in the rendered HTML, they are visible for Google search. Nothing else matters with regards to JavaScript. Consider server-side rendering or pre-rendering if you can, if it makes sense, because you might get benefits from early URL detection. And do make sure that your content makes it clear what the hell your website is about. All right? If you want to learn more, here are some links to learn more. And, well, thanks for learning more about this if you're interested. So take a picture of that slide if you want to. And thanks a lot for listening, and have a great time. See you around.